Why do Asian parents want their children to become doctors? That's the story, right? If you're brown, you go on to become a doctor, engineer, or lawyer. Doctors usually top of the list. So we realized this after talking to a few guests of ours on the Scrubbed In show by Peerr, and we thought we'd go around finding the truth. And that's what this video is about. The truth behind why Asian parents want their children to become doctors. I don't know, would I want my child to become a doctor? I'm not sure yet. Abd, what about you? Do you want your child to become a doctor?
I don't even want to be a doctor. No, I'm joking. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation talking about why is it stereotypically seen as Asian parents wanting their children to be doctor. And like you said, we had a guest yesterday who kind of talked about it. So let's talk about our own story first. Do you think you were forced or there was a pressure for you to become a doctor? And why is it that Asian parents tend to encourage or push their children to become doctors, engineer, whatever it may be?
So I wouldn't say there was any ever pressure on me to become anything at all, to be honest. Actually, maybe one thing. And the pressure was just to do well and to take advantage of the opportunity of having a good education. That's what it was. So the pressure was, don't receive a great education and do nothing with it. So I think that was the only pressure. But in terms of what I could become, anything and everything, whatever I wanted, as long as it took a hold of the educational system. So no, I wouldn't say I was ever told you had to become a doctor. But I was in a time where I was growing up, and it's probably the same for you, where naturally, if you did well in the state schools that we went to, the best performers usually went on to become, as in the first choice was go and study medicine, become a doctor. What about you? Your parents say, no, Abdul, you must go on to become a doctor.
I was like one of those dumb kids. So I don't think anyone would have even thought if I wanted to do medicine, I would get into medicine and be a doctor. Funnily enough, my parents, they weren't too keen on it. My dad is super relaxed. You've met him. My mum wanted me to do something completely different and was go down kind of religious studies, learn about kind of religious studies, teaching Arabic, kind of that route. And obviously I didn't get into placements. I didn't get into the schools.
Abdul Rayed, the local scholar.
Scholar, right? So she wanted me to be a religious scholar because obviously she's into Arabic and teaching and whatnot herself. So I agree with the point you said. Naturally, anytime anyone does really well at school, even if they don't want to do medicine for some weird reason, it's like, okay, you've done so well in your exams, it'll be a waste of talent if you don't go down medicine, which is a separate topic altogether. So coming back to the topic of the conversation, which is why do Asian parents want their children to become doctors? I think the first big reason, and it's why everyone assumes that it may be the case for a lot of people, is the nobility, the title, the prestige, the reputation is a big thing in the Southeast Asian community, or from what I know.
Yeah, you notice it, isn't it? You graduate and your parents are like, wow, that's it. My son, daughter is a doctor. They're calling up people. They're talking about it. But I think what is more so is the nobility factor to it. What it is that it's a profession where you're helping people in their worst moments back onto their feet. And it's like you're giving direct value back to the world. You can witness that value. You see that value. And it's just a case of how can our parents not be proud of that, right? We've met bankers. We've got friends who are bankers, lawyers, and so forth, right? But when there's a certain element, there's a certain sort of satisfaction when a person says, thank you so much for doing so and so, right? After they've had a heart attack, they've got diabetes and they're struggling with so and so. If you can help them back to their feet and they say thank you, that thank you is not the same as a thank you from, let's say, a client at an investment bank that says, thanks for making me another £1 million. Yeah. So it's that nobility. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think like nobility, reputation, prestige is a big thing for Asian families, Asian parents. And it's like when you do become a doctor, it's as if you've done the whole family, the extended family and everyone in the village proud. Like even now, I went to a wedding a few days ago and they knew I was a doctor and they referred to you as a doctor. And it's like, it's like you're the first in the village, or we're proud of you and you've done something amazing and incredible. And I'm sure parents do get a little hit or kick out of it type of thing. So there is the element of prestige, nobility. You feel proud that your children are doctors and you can go around to telling people. And then that comes on to the next bit, which is there a pressure, or is there kind of let's say a competitive nature among Asian families? Because we always see memes and, Indian or Asian aunties comparing their children with other children. Is that a factor to why they push their children down sometimes?
As in push them towards medicine?
Yeah.
You couldn't you? Because combine that whole nobility, prestige, then you're suddenly saying, I need my kid to go and earn me that. So you can think, is there a pressure there? But that's a natural human thing, competition, isn't it? Medics compete against each other. Lawyers at top firms compete against each other. Engineers, think about it, everyone's fighting for a FANG job, right? Facebook, Amazon, wherever you are, you're fighting for those jobs. Competition is a natural thing. So when I think about our parents, right? Our parents' pride and everything they have, right, is their children. They look at their children. Like you might say, I look at my achievements. I've got my publications. I've got a business. I've got a firm, or I've got something that you're proud of. If you ask your mum what's the thing that they're most proud of, they'll probably turn around and say, my child. Right? So when you say when your child is your pride, naturally you're going to say, I want it to be the best, right? It's like your business. If I say your business is your pride, you're going to say, well, my business better be one of the world leading firms in the industry. So I think there is a natural prayer, but that's human, I think. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that.
Definitely. So now let's flip it and talk about other reasons that are less superficial as to why Asian parents would push their children down to becoming a doctor, a lawyer, a surgeon. And we're talking about Asian because obviously we're Asians ourselves and we understand the community better than other cultures and societies. So what do you think are other less superficial reasons as to why Asian parents are keen or do encourage their children to become doctors?
So this is the real truth now, and there's a wisdom behind it. And I think later on, when you become a doctor, when the COVID pandemic hits especially, then you realize, damn, our parents are actually really clever for telling me about this career path. And that's job stability, career progression, right? The need for doctors in the world. It will never not be needed. A doctor will never not be needed. The COVID pandemic hit, most people were laid off, most people were on furlough. Who were the only people that had a job, still going in, still doing the job? Yes, it had its caveats. Yes, it was, you could say, dangerous in a sense that we never knew what the COVID virus was, and here we are in front of patients who are coughing away, and we were exposing ourselves knowingly to it. But the idea of job stability, career progression, all of that is there. It's undeniable. You can't sit there and say, it's not a stable career. You can say, yes, you might not get the job you want. You can say, for example, you might say, I want to be a interventional cardiologist in central London. That might not be available, massively competitive. But I think you could be a cardiologist across the country somewhere. You could get a job post somewhere. It's the saying a friend said to a friend who said it to me. So a chain of narrations there. The surgeon who said this said he's never met someone who wanted to be a surgeon who isn't a surgeon, who didn't go on to become one. Right, so I think that's the truth in the medical industry. I think you can become whatever you want, and the job stability, career progression, it's all there laid out for you. It's competitive, yes, but it's there. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. So I think a lot of Asian parents, especially people that have immigrated to the UK or other kind of first world countries, job stability, career stability is important for them, and this is more so in a community where their parents may not be as educated. They've never maybe had a stable career or a stable job. And imagine you're a parent, you come to this country, you've sacrificed so much. The first thing you're going to be thinking about is your children, and you're going to be thinking about, okay, what are the things that will grant them stability, grant them financial stability, despite the salary issues in the NHS. I think medicine, engineers, lawyers is obviously at the top of that list because they don't know any better. If you were to ask Asian family or a lot of Asian households, what other careers do you want me to go to? They don't know. They don't know there's a whole different world out there. And they only know about doctors and this and that, right? So maybe ignorance is bliss. They're not too aware of it. So I imagine that the whole concept of immigrating, sacrificing, it's one of those things that maybe it is worthwhile the struggles they had.
So, as in, what do you mean?
So, you know, if you've struggled and moved thousands away from your home country to a different country, you want to make the most of it. You want to capitalize on that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And with the education system that's primarily free, with, you know, the opportunity to now become a doctor, why wouldn't you take it? Why wouldn't you encourage your children? Obviously, the narrative has changed now where parents are like, do what you like, where your passions are. But back then, when it was about survival and kind of making sure your family continues growing, that was probably a big factor.
I don't know, even what you just mentioned now about today, the whole thing of follow your passion and stuff like that, right? Are we pushing it too far now? Because you have to ask the question, right? Follow your passions and stuff, but what happens when it doesn't work out? It's a real world we live in. Follow your passion, yes, but then you have to ask yourself, what skills are you developing? What safety nets have you got behind you? You can say, oh, cut the safety net, but the reality is, man, you have to be careful. You have to be careful in this world, right? You can say, follow your passion, become an artist, and next thing you know, your art isn't selling, you haven't got a roof over your head, you can't put food on the table. Whilst our parents, they understand that, and so they often say, yes, go on and have fun, play your football, try and become a footballer, but make sure you've got an education first.
I think, the stability is important. Even now, when I have conversation with my mom regarding Peerr, do we stay full time? Do you work on it? It's always her main concern is stability, having a career. What happens if something goes wrong? Can you look after yourself? Can you look after your family? Right? Even now, for them, and obviously they're a product of the environment, right? And that stability, that, you know, income or looking after your family is such a big thing for them.
Exactly. And going off of that, right, studying medicine, becoming a doctor, you learn so many skills that can be taken anywhere. So if you think about it, just doing the course medicine itself, right, you can go anywhere you like. You usually have some form of stability and security just with the skill assets you learn. So that's a major thing. Let's talk about the topic of money. Money is important because, yes, you can say underpaid, overworked, lots of hours, etc, etc, etc. But let's talk relative terms, right? So my parents migrated. We're talking relative terms to what I would have been earning in Bangladesh with their educational system, their employment system. I'm probably way better off, right, than what could have been had they not migrated and given me the opportunities that I have right now. So let's be honest. If you're a doctor, you're going to be amongst the top earners in the country still, right? Yes, you might not be battling it out with your corporate workers, the private sector, but in the public sector, you're earning quite a lot, and you're stable. So
definitely. And compared to the salaries our parents earn, compared to what even a base F1 salary earn, is so much more higher, right? Exactly. So for them, it's a no-brainer, right? And it's all about survival. It's all about grafting and growing and that security. So yeah, it's a no-brainer, really. The other thing that's worth mentioning as well is there is a long tradition, and most often than not, what we've noticed, or a lot of people have noticed, is there are a large number of doctors in ethnic minorities or Asian countries, Asian families, and it doesn't even need to be Asians. It's when you have a lot of doctors in your family, naturally the children become doctors, and so on and so forth. It's because it's all they know. You know, there are perks and there is benefits to the job, and there are moments where you do see your parents or grandparents really happy being a doctor. And you do think of how many doctors are doctors because their parents are doctors or their grandparents are doctors.
Yeah, exactly. So we've met those people, haven't we, where they've said, oh, my dad's a doctor, my grandfather's a doctor, my so-and-so is a doctor, my uncles are a doctor, my cousin.
A few professions, right? Where do you see, oh, my dad's a teacher, I became a teacher, or my dad's a banker, I became a banker, right? The one profession that stands out the most where you kind of follow the family tradition or the family thing is medicine. Yeah.
And it's exposure too, right? When you see your family, so speaking about some of our friends who've said, yeah, my dad's so-and-so, a surgeon or whatever, I've always been exposed to it, always been intrigued by it, seeing them do so many different things, and it just naturally influences you. It's exposure, right? So I think it does influence a lot of people, and family tradition is a big thing. We've met people who've literally said, yeah, I became a doctor because, you know what, everyone's a doctor.
Yeah, it's a norm, right? We've met so many people, it's like, well, the dads are doctors, the brothers are doctors, and it's like, yeah, it was expected for me to become a doctor. I was competent enough to be a doctor. there was nothing else that was interesting or I didn't really care about. I became a doctor. And then lo and behold, they probably went and did something else after graduating and being a doctor, right?
Exactly. So family tradition is a big one. And then what else have we got here? What else have other people said? What's the narrative that you're talking about here? What do they mean by that?
So I think the narrative, in the sense that in terms of Asian families, there's always the narrative or the stereotypical thing. Your children need to be bankers, doctors, lawyers. It's that thing. And what I think has happened is it's been said so much that it's subconsciously been ingrained into parents' head. So even it may have started off as a joke. This is me speculating. Many years ago, they probably said it as a joke. And then when you hear something long enough or often enough, it subconsciously goes into your mind, and then you think, do you know what? They should become a doctor. They should do this. They should do that, right? So this long-standing narrative of, Asian kids or Asian parents always push their kids to be doctors. Maybe subconsciously they act on it, right? So that is a thing. So that's a theory. You can speculate.
Yeah, I guess so. I can see the narrative about it, but I think that's broken now. I think because of the new generation, the millennial generation, who we are, we've got kids. And I'm not sure I care about.
So this conversation is mostly, I think, stems from immigrant parents that do come to first world countries. Exactly. So our generation, I don't think it's a totally different thing. Maybe the generations above, it wasn't that thing, but it's that middle limbo generation, or the first, second generations that do come to a new country where there is an education system, where there is maybe the opportunity to become a doctor. Exactly. Then all of that stuff kicks in.
I agree. I think that's all that I've got on that topic. What about you? Anything else?
I think that's it. It's interesting, and I think we had a few guests talk about it, so it's worth kind of sharing our thoughts on the matter.
And there you go. So that's why Asian parents want us brown people to become doctors. See you next week otherwise.